The last item under new business on the agenda is council rules update. The reason why we're revisiting this is because the way the council rule is written, even though I got it into your packet like it's supposed to be, the rule states that it gets into the packet and then it goes to a council meeting for your review. You cannot act on it. We acted on it at our last council meeting. It has to wait another council meeting to act. It's kind of confusing, but perhaps we should modify that rule at one point. But since it is the way it is, we're revisiting it. If you recall, the last vote we had was 8-1 in favor of this rule, which is setting the agenda. And it's not listed as a number, but it should, if you decide to go forward with this, it should be the rule in front of the agenda procedures. There. So, are there any other questions from the council?
Need a motion?
Okay, take a motion.
I'll make a motion to amend and re-adopt council rules. And I'll read that. The Claremont City Council hereby amends and re-adopts its council rules as follows. 2/3 vote required. Setting the agenda. When setting the agenda for a council meeting, the mayor will coordinate agenda items with the city manager. The final authority for determining content of the agenda rests with the mayor. Once the mayor has approved the agenda, the council clerk will format and post the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll need any further discussion before we take a roll call? Mr. Folta, I'll say yes because you brought this to my attention last council meeting, but please make it brief.
I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bernie Folta, Ward 3. The reason I'm doing this has to do with governance process. As I said last time, and I'm just going to repeat it once, that when we have a fair-minded mayor, which we often do, things are okay. But every once in a while, there will not be, the people will elect a non-fair-minded mayor. And therefore, the council, the government needs protection from that, and not putting the onus on one power, because power has a tendency to go to people's heads. And I sometimes have to say, especially in Claremont. However, I would also like to suggest a 21st century upgrade. And the 21st century upgrade, which has to do with participation and transparency and so on, goes like this. Any councilor may place a matter on a council agenda, and I'm looking for in advance. In other words, that suggestion has to do with democratizing the opportunity for city business to be discussed, not going through one gatekeeper, if you will, the mayor, who may or may not be fair-minded. So I think in a 21st century city, any of 9 councilors who has got something that they want the council to discuss should have the right to put it on the agenda. And so that's my suggestion for a little bit more 21st century in Claremont. We got 82 years to go.
And we do.
So,
Each one of us has the right to do that.
Is that true?
Absolutely. At the end of our meetings, every time, we.
Where is it written that you have the right, in spite of what a mayor may want, in spite of what a mayor may
okay,
want?
this is not a discussion between the public and the
It's
council.
not in writing.
The council, so the
It's
way,
folklore. It's called folklore.
okay. Anyway, discussion at the council. Councilor Kolowski.
Just
to maybe address some of the concern that was just brought forward. I can agree with that to a point. But I have to tell you, we do have the option, like Councilor Toll said, to bring forward agenda items, which are announced publicly, by the way, at the tail end of the meeting. And trust me, in the event that one of my items didn't make it to the agenda, I would be inquiring why. And if it happened again and it was a routine thing, trust I would be raising holy hell here on public access to find out the reason. So I hope that gives you some address that it would be, it's a fair process, the way I see it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Simonds.
I'm kind of glad, actually, we're talking about this tonight, because I actually received a couple phone calls on this vote that we did the last time this was before us. And it goes somewhat along with what Mr. Fulta says. As I read this and I think about this, it's the final authority, which means that in the way it's written and how it sounds, is that the only person that makes that determination as to what goes on the agenda after everything's said and done is the mayor. And as I read that, I guess I too now, in hindsight, have a little bit of an issue with that. And again, it's not with you as a mayor, just in particular, that position, the position of mayor, has the final authority. I personally, I mean, I'm not going to be on the council anymore. I personally would be a little bit more comfortable with saying rests with the mayor and council, if we were to add, so that it goes that way, to add, just a little bit more of a possibility to that.
What about the
because
city manager?
Well, she's already addressed it with the city manager. So if the city manager wants something more, I mean, we all will have conversations with the city manager, but if, and again, I'm only saying this because I've had public input to me. At first, I said, yeah, this is fine, because I work with a mayor who listens to us and puts everything on there that we asked to put on there. But as I read it in its form, that the final authority for determining content rests with the mayor, that almost seems like it does only go with one person for the ability to put something on there.
So the part of the mayor's job is to coordinate agendas and do all of the administrative actions of running a meeting. That's codified in the charter and all sorts of things. So what you have here is a process, because there have been issues in the past, and I am just trying to get clarification, because these are council meetings. The final authority does rest with the council. And the city manager and I work together to deal with the agenda. And if for some reason a mayor in the future were to be very autocratic, or whatever word you want to use, he has in his process to put his concerns in the city manager report. So he would be going right to the council in his city manager's report and saying, I tried to get this item on the agenda, and then I have to answer, or whoever the mayor is has to answer to the council. But these are council meetings, and somebody, when there's a disagreement, at the time that you're going through the process of putting an agenda together, has to have the final say. So that's where all this is coming from. There are multiple ways that any concerns can be addressed. But when I'm sitting in the city manager's office and there's a disagreement with what can be put on the agenda for that evening, or should it be moved to the next meeting and all of that, 99% of the time we can come to an agreement. 1% of the time. So what would you have me do, or any future mayor? Convene a council meeting so I can get the agenda finalized? That doesn't make sense.
No, and again, don't take this as
It's not personal.
something towards you as a mayor. I'm looking at it as as we know, ideal in things that are written and how they're written and whether they're written in the proper way. And as I read this, in all respect for the position, as it's written right now, I think in retrospect with the input that I've been given, I would probably vote a no for this on mine, with no disrespect to you. I would prefer it slightly different.
So what about okay, go ahead, Councilor Kier.
I was just going to say, I feel like if we're looking at it just as a process point, these are our meetings as a council. The mayor is the person who runs the meeting. I understand where everybody's coming from, but I think as a process point, the verbiage maybe isn't the most wonderful, and maybe it can be a little abrasive, but I think it makes sense. It's exactly what we already have written in our charter. It's just putting it into a process point.
So do you want a prepositional clause in front of the sentence, the second sentence that says, in instances of disagreement, the final authority? I mean, I think,
I think you have the minutes of this meeting itself to go back and explain to people, really, I mean, right? I can only think to things that I've had to wonder what the past council was thinking. So as long as this is clearly explained, I understand what you're saying.
My point to this would be, if there was a slight change to this, you wouldn't have to go back and look at what the minutes to this meeting are. It would be a clear and distinct path going forward. That's just my point. I mean, this is my last evening with the council, but as I said, from input that I've received, having the last time we looked at this, it's gotten me to open my eyes a little bit more to the specific words of final authority in that one person. And I realize it's a process point, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to how we're doing this. I just would be more comfortable with a slightly different wording on that.
I'm just, the words that you've chosen, though, I don't think help the situation. I'm just trying to think through it through
If
just
someone else has
administrative functions. It's,
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, but it's just, in hindsight, as I've thought about this and as I see it read.
I know how much time I've spent on
I know
dealing
you
with
have.
agenda issues that don't need to be. Assistant Mayor Damon.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add, before an agenda is posted, advertised, whatever, publicly distributed, somebody has to have final say as to what it looks like. And usually, if it's a committee of people, no matter how small,
It'll take a
what
long
you
time.
end up getting is a irrelevant, where you really wanted something else.
That is my Christmas list.
So-
Weird.
Yeah, that's my point. Somebody has to have the final authority.
I just wanted to make sure my point was made in that.
Is there somebody who would like to read the motion?
I think it was, wasn't it?
Was it read?
I've already read it.
Oh, I'm
Motion
sorry.
on the floor, it's
All
been
right.
seconded.
Okay, roll call.
Move the question here.
Move the girelephant.
Carolyn Cole,
Yes, as a starting point, yep.
Scott Pope,
Yes.
Keith Raymond,
Yes.
Alan Dameron,
Yes.
Abigail Kier,
Yes.
Bruce Temple,
Yes.
Nicholas Klosky,
Sorry, buddy. Yes.
John Simonds,
No.
Mayor Charlene Levitt.
Yes. Okay, now we're moving on to committee reports.